What is post-structuralism? Contemporary scholars agree that the term post-structuralism can hardly be defined. In fact, according to Benoit Dillé, post-structuralism as such does not exist. For Dillé, there is no group of philosophers or scholars who ever formed a group called post-structuralism. What exists as a post-structuralist tendency is a retrospective epistemological construction that gives a point of meaning in the vast landscape of French philosophy. Hence, the least that we can do is describe the term post-structuralism rather than define it. For this reason, the term post-structuralism is used very loosely, which makes it very difficult to identify it with any school of thought. According to David Macy, if there is a common core to all the tendencies that have been described as post-structuralist, then it lies in the act of breaking with structuralism. For instance, if one of the central tenets in structuralism is the idea that literature is made up of nothing more or less than a set of arbitrary conventions and structures which we learn to read as literary, post-structuralism suggests literature is the privileged place of subversion of such arbitrary conventions. In short, post-structuralism is primarily a reaction to structuralism. Post-structuralism can also be seen as a strand within almost everything, from new historicism to post-colonial theory. In fact, as Dillé writes, post-structuralists were responding to specific social and material contexts: the withering of the modernist values, the death of God, the atrocities of the Second World War, processes of decolonization, the decline of the belief in progress, the democratization of university education, and the cultural revolution of the 1960s. Derrida's long-term project of deconstruction of metaphysics has probably left the most significant traces in the disciplines of social sciences and humanities, and best encapsulated the spirit of post-structuralism. Judith Butler, in her book titled Gender Trouble, also locates the origin of post-structuralism in the writings of Jacques Derrida. According to Bernard Harcourt, Butler identifies the post-structuralist tendency as the rejection of the claims of totality and universality and the presumption of binary structural oppositions that implicitly operate to quell the insistent ambiguity and openness of linguistic and cultural signification. For Butler, structuralist theory recognizes the arbitrariness of the sign, but it nevertheless focuses more on the completeness of the linguistic system at the expense of the moment of difference between the signifier and the signified. Lastly, other characteristics of the post-structuralist tendency include its reluctance to ground discourse in any theory of metaphysical origins, an insistence on an inevitable plurality and instability of meaning, a distrust of systematic scientificity, and the abandoning of the old Enlightenment project.